this whole sort of narrative about our country is based on a whole bunch of fictions and storytelling about that the royals keep coming up and being part of. I mean, was there a point? I mean, was it to do with your time at school, or was it later on that you sort of thought this doesn't make any sense? I mean, what is this family doing here?
I didn't have to think about it much until I very definitely had to think about it, because I was awarded, this would have been about 22 years ago now, a curious incident, got the Commonwealth First Novel Award. And I was taken out to a very high-end dinner at, I think, Highgrove Park, which was the Queen Mother's house at the time. Very good food. Amazing pictures on the wall. I remember she had a lot of the Hockney Cavafy prints. There was a lot of naked boys in bed in Cairo, which seemed high quality but unexpected. But there you go. And then at the end of the meal, after they'd given me a lot of wine, they said, "Would you like to meet the Queen?" Because that's part of this whole process. Luckily, by then, I'd already learnt the principle of wait till you're sober before you say yes or no to anything. I said, "I will talk to you in the morning." And I went home and I thought, no, this is wrong. I wouldn't say there's any message in Curious Incident, but I would say that it grows out of a worldview that holds that everyone is of equal value, whoever they are and wherever they come from, especially if they're people who are pushed to the margins.
Yeah.
And to take part in a sort of ceremonial meeting with someone who's part of a family who, by virtue of their birth, are thought to be superior to everyone else, and in front of whom you have to sort of play out that superiority / inferiority with acts of obeisance, by, like, you have to bow and literally bow and scrape. I thought these two things do not fit together. And I said that in a letter. I said, "Thanks for your very nice meal, but I'm going to say no." And for those reasons, I felt a little guilty, but quite they did. But more significantly, I heard that the only reason I was being asked to meet the Queen was because the novelist Carol Phillips, who won the main novel award, had refused to meet the Queen. And it's usually the person who wins the main award who's asked to meet the Queen. So I was a stand-in. So I was being called up from the subs bench, which they did not tell me at the time.
That is interesting.
So,
do you know who then went and met the Queen? Or was she
no. And I doubt she noticed the hole in her diary, to be honest.
No, she wouldn't be told to the invites. Yeah, she wouldn't have been
But it assuaged my guilt very quickly when I realised they were.
Yeah. And the royals have courted your company several times, haven't they? Because it was that was the Commonwealth First Novel Award.
That's right, yes.
And then you were invited to the Royal Garden Party. You also turned them down. And then you had
I have to, yes. I never told my mother that. She would have never, ever, ever forgiven me if I confessed that I'd. She's no longer with us. If I'd not gone to a garden party, I cannot imagine anything worse. To go back to school again, the other thing I find profoundly uncomfortable is dressing up like everyone else and then engaging in some formal occasion. So royal or not, the whole idea of putting on a tie and a suit and standing around at a garden and
We've been to weddings, right? This just feels like a wedding, does it?
Yes, but thankfully, are we in the middle of a culture change now? And even at a funeral, people will say, come wearing bright clothes. Yeah. Or at a wedding, they say, don't be stiff, just be yourselves. Yeah. You go to, I'm old enough to have remembered that when people went to a sort of a reasonably good hotel, you had to slightly dress up. And I fear it's almost gone too far now. If you go to a very nice hotel, people are looking very, very relaxed. Yeah. Perhaps a little too relaxed, I think.
We're pro the relaxed vibe, aren't we? So, and were you offered an OBE? Because you...
I was, yes.
Right. And so you turned it down.
So just to go back to the garden party, I cannot slide over it without mentioning the footnote that in the pamphlet they send you to invite to the garden party, you can pre-buy a copy of the DVD of the day.
Wow, how weird.
It's. I think it's like the extended live-action version of, like a picture of yourself on the water slide at Alton Towers, screaming with the splashes going over.
But I've spoken to people that have gone to them, and there's about 4,000 people in the garden, and they're all sort of sectioned off, and so the lower orders are down the other end of the garden, and the royals come out for about 20 minutes, talk to the higher orders of guests, and then they go in again, and everybody else is expected to be very pleased that they got invited into the garden in the first place, but you don't really see them unless you've got a pair of binoculars.
It must be one of the dullest DVDs out there.
Yes. Yeah.
That sounds so creepy. That setup of
I heard the other day
that
there's an online channel that actually put a video of a 24-hour non-stop video of paint drying, and it got thousands of viewers. And I reckon that something like that might get a few less. But
well, I've been watching a bit of the Swedish annual moose migration video, which you might have seen featured in The Guardian recently. It's actually blissful, absolutely blissful.
Yeah.
It's moose gathered across a river in central Sweden during their annual migration, and zoologists have put up about 30 hidden cameras, and they sort of move between them. And it's just a glorious antidote to modern life.
That does sound like lovely viewing.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there are channels that specialise in those sort of rain and storm and things to help people get to sleep. So we can get the video from the garden party to
exactly.
compete.
I was wondering if we should just film ourselves doing stuff like arriving here. Because, if we wanted to make a bit more money for the Republic campaign, we could just sell
I think
some
you're
crap
underestimating
video.
how wonderful those moose are. I mean, the moose are pretty good.
Well, but the garden party, compared to the garden party, maybe we're landing in the middle between moose and a garden party.
We could introduce moose to the garden party. That would be interesting. But I get this. I think I am sort of a similar mindset that, I've been to the Oxford Union to do a debate a couple of times, and they all want to wear a black tie, and I never do. I'll wear a suit, but I don't.
In fact, I've been asked to come and talk at the union several times as well.
And you never have, or
no, never have. I think, they are, and a lot of people within the university feel are an embarrassment because they're not anything to do with the university. They're a private club that has Oxford in the name. They sit in the middle of town, and one of their hobbies is inviting contentious speakers along. And the university winces every so often when they get headlines because everyone in the outer world thinks it's not part of the university.
I had no idea it wasn't part of the university.
Yeah. So when Steve Bannon comes along, or David Irvin, the rest of the university, most of the rest of the university just sort of roll their eyes.
It's a very odd institution. I've been there a couple of times, and the last time I sort of chatting to some of the actual students outside who never really went in, but they came along for that debate, and they said, look, it's a very strange environment, very strange culture, and it is. Although we did win, they abolished the monarchy, won by a landslide, but so which is interesting.
Just dropping that in.
Just drop that in. But actually, I start my book talking about the experience of doing that, and say that it really isn't that impressive in terms of debating. So this sort of notion that if you've been there and you're the president of the state, the union, that somehow you're set for a world in politics and so on, is really misplaced, because it's no different to any other debating